Hey folks, I'm Red and this is my Watcher of Realms channel. And today is a little bit of a different video. I'm on the main account and I was kind of curious. We've got this shard summoning event coming for Rork, and Rork is an HP-based damage dealer. He's actually a fighter here, but his damage scales off of HP. And recently in the game, they've been adding different heroes whose damage scales off of defense. And I don't have Rork. I think Rork is the only one whose damage scales off of HP, so he will be interesting to play around with. But I thought I'd just do kind of a test of the defense-based damage dealers. So if we go here to normal, let's take a look. I think what I've got here is, so I've set this up. So I've got a healer to keep him alive, and I've got 3 defenders. Okay, 2 of which, George and this lady, what's her name, Draga, their damage scales off of defense. Okay, here's another defender. This is Ardeth, and his damage scales off of attack. Okay, so they've got these basic attacks, and he's got some other stuff in his kit, but basically he's a tank that can kind of keep himself alive, but deals damage based on attack. Okay, now he does magic damage. George also does magic damage, but his damage is based off of defense. Okay, so damage scales off of defense. So I was kind of curious. Now Draga, her damage scales off of defense. Okay, she has this basic attack that helps keep her alive. But then she's got this additional attack, which every 8 seconds kind of triggers. So I've tried to build each of them relatively similar, but essentially we're going to be comparing Ardeth and George because their damage is the same. And here I've got George geared. So his attack is, or his defense, sorry, his damage number is 1086, and he's got 100 attack speed, so normal attack interval, and I've increased his crit rate to 100%. Okay, Ardeth is quite similar, so his damage scales off of attack, so his attack is 1175, and then he's got 100 attack speed, standard, and then 100% crit rate and no crit damage. So these numbers, the attack amount and the crit rate and crit damage, are the same. So they should basically be dealing the same amount of damage. Okay. Now we have an issue with George because he has an ultimate that's auto-ultimate. So it automatically triggers. And his ultimate actually does more damage. So it increases his defense and inflicts plague. So if we go into the guild boss here and we just put them in, let's do a playtest here, and we'll just quit before George does his ultimate. Okay, so they should be attacking basically at the same time, and they should be giving us similar numbers. Okay, so I'll put George in here, and I'll do the escape method, and I'll put Ardeth in here. So they're basically doing the same amount of attacks, and then we'll see what kind of damage they do. Okay, so here we go. Let's quit the battle. So just before he does his ultimate, and let's see what kind of damage they did. Okay. So pretty similar damage numbers. Okay, 5,583 for George, 4,296 for Ardeth. Let me do this again, and I'll put Ardeth in first and see if that makes a difference. So Ardeth goes in, and then George, and let's see if we get similar numbers. Okay, So I think they basically got the same number of attacks in. Okay, 4,655 for George, 4,296 for Ardith. All right. So what's going on here? They're roughly the same numbers, but for some reason, we get a bit more damage out of one than the other. So I think this has to do with their skill multipliers, their damage multipliers, and Ardith's damage multipliers seem to be lower than George's. Okay. So what this tells me is that your damage dealers have other things going on than just what their damage scales off of. Now, someone like Ardith is going to be a little bit easier to build for damage because your weapon has flat attack on it. Okay, there's no weapon that has a flat defense number. It would be nice if they did, because then you could count on it for your damage dealers whose damage is built off of defense, right? Now, someone like Rork, his damage scales off of HP. He does have this base HP built into the breastplate. So he might be a lot easier to build, and you might be able to get better damage numbers. The other thing is, if you look at the kind of gear that you can get, okay, I can get defense bonus on everything, right? And I can get crit rate. But it's just going to be a little bit easier to build someone with attack because you've got that weapon that has the flat attack on it. So the other thing is, a lot of people don't invest in defense, so it's going to take you a while to build up enough gear that could really be usable on a defense dealer. The other factor is, of course, the skills, right? If you have someone like George who does additional damage, he's going to be much stronger than an attack-based hero who doesn't have that skill, right? Who doesn't have a damage skill. Someone like Draga also, has additional attacks that she gets based on this. Okay, so one of the issues is the gear is kind of geared towards attack-based damage dealers as opposed to defense-based damage dealers. And there are other factors, of course, like how much crit damage you have, how many attacks you can get in, so your attack speed, and then your rage regen in order to get those ultimates going. So those are some things to consider. I'll have to test Rork when he comes and see how well we can build him. I think they need to make some adjustments if they really want defense-based damage dealers to be a thing. It is nice to have that additional defense, but there's a lot of content in this game where defense kind of gets ignored. So I think something they still need to work on. They are going to give us a little bit more gear space, which is nice, because when you have all these different sets and you have these different kinds of damage dealers, you need to store more gear. So hopefully the next update with more gear space is coming soon, and until then we just have to struggle through as best we can, I guess. So yeah, so those are my thoughts about that. I will test Rork when he comes. As you can see, these heroes are quite low level, and I've kept them that way just so I could try and give an indication of what potential damage numbers are. But it's nice to see that they don't really differ that much in terms of damage from each other. So these are two epic defenders whose damage just scales on different things, and nice to be able to see when you get their stats roughly equivalent that they do similar kinds of damage. So if the damage multipliers are pretty different between these two heroes, and did seem to be some indications that there were, then once you increase the stats significantly, it's going to make a big difference in terms of their damage. So damage multipliers, it'd be nice if they would give us that information. So far we haven't been able to get it, but maybe after they see this video, they will give us some of those numbers so we can more accurately test these things. But yeah, so there's some thoughts hopefully that helps you to understand the difference between the different kinds of damage, and that there isn't much as long as you can get the stats for the particular damage class into similar ranges. So thanks very much for watching. Do like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.